Hi everyone, welcome back to Metanoia. My name is Carrie Jane, and today I'm going to be making another video that is requested by Be True One. I have it written down here. You want to know how life paths mesh well in relationships with one another. You say, I'm a 7 and my husband is a 2. So there you have it. So this video is going to be about numerology compatibility, a little bit skewed towards romance just because of the nature of this question, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can use this to interpret your interactions with your family members and your friends and things of that nature. And also, I think that you first requested that I make a series on interactions between every life path number, and unfortunately, I just don't have the time for this. Doing a series on compatibility would probably involve me doing a video on each interaction, of course, so that every person could, click on the interaction that they are dealing with. For example, a 5 and a 2, a 5 and a 3, a 5 and a 4, etc., so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, this would mean having to make 45 videos, and maybe I could pull it off if I was doing this full time and this was my main source of currency, but unfortunately I just don't have the time and the money to put together something like that. But what I can do today is just kind of give you a short summary on, what this could entail for you. And we'll see where we can get here today. Before I get to the thick of it, I also want to say that I am not much of a fan of compatibility, specifically romantic compatibility in numerology. I'm not a fan of the topic, and that is because a lot of the time it's used as a means to try to determine whether or not two people are meant for one another, and that's just not how I see it. Always, numerology is a tool to try to understand things better. It's not an end-all be-all type of thing, and you could say that for almost everything in metaphysics. What compatibility in numerology mostly teaches us is what obstacles that we're going to possibly come up against with a person, and how many of them, how many obstacles. And with certain life path numbers, it is more likely that you're going to experience more obstacles with one opposed to another. But that doesn't mean that you're not meant to be with one another. That doesn't mean that you should never be together. That's silly, and it doesn't really make any sense. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before I talk about this further. Now, in my introduction to numerology video, I made this chart. And this chart is, in a nutshell, all the compatibility that you'll ever need. It's really just these groups of numbers at the top here that are grouped into their own categories. The 1, the 5, the 7, the 2, the 4, the 8, the 3, the 6, the 9, those are all grouped together in the same generalized kind of theme that those numbers have. So if you're a 1, a 5, or a 7, you're of the intellect. If you're a 2, a 4, and 8, you're in business mode. If you're 3, 6, 9, you're creativity, etc. And basically, in a nutshell, whatever is interacting within that bubble is considered a natural match. Very simple. So if you're a 6, for example, looking at this chart, you're a natural match with a 3, you're a natural match with a 9, you're a natural match with another 6. Then it gets a little bit more hairy when you get into compatibility and challenge, numbers that may not be necessarily a natural match for you, but are still compatible. And so I wrote that chart here. So the way you read this is, for example, if you're a 1, you're compatible with 2, 3, 9, 2, 1, 3, 6, 9. And these are very fluid. And you will, as a numerologist, see different things. I mean, there's a general consensus. You'll see a lot of similar things. People will say generally the same things, but within numerology, always, the deeper you go down into it, you're going to see people saying different things. And this is just my this chart is based off my research and based on my own experience, essentially what I've seen work and what not work. And then last but not least, you have the challenge numbers. You'll read it the same way. Say, for example, your 3 life path, a 4 and a 7 and an 8 is considered a challenge. So you can see this in this video. You can pause it and take a look at it. You can make it for yourself and keep it somewhere if you genuinely want to become a little bit more, studious with numerology. Do whatever the heck you want with it. And like I said, it's also in my introduction to numerology video. So there you have it. That is the compatibility in a nutshell, like I said. And there are a few other things that I do want to say, though, because this raises a lot of questions. It really does. And one of them is it a good idea to be with the same life path number that you are? So, for example, I'm a 5 life path. Would it be a natural match? Would it be a good match for me to also be with the number 5 life path? And this is just my opinion, but I don't always think it's a good idea. I think that you would make very fast friends. I think you'd make very good friends. But when it comes to something like marriage, for example, or a serious relationship, you're really going to want to find someone who compliments you in all the right ways. It's not necessarily a thing where it's like, oh, you fill all the parts of me that are empty, or oh, you satisfy all the things that I can't do for myself. That's a very toxic way to think about relationships. So if you do think about that, recommend trying a different approach. It's more of like, when it comes to the long haul, there will be parts of yourselves when it comes to two people where you're similar in all the right ways and you're dissimilar in all the right ways. And if you get with another life path number that is the same life path number as you, it's quite possible that you're going to be similar in all the wrong ways and dissimilar in all the wrong ways, if that makes any sense. So, would you make fast friends? Absolutely. It might be challenging, though, in the long run, depending on what kind of life path numbers that you are. There are certain circumstances where, based on those two currents' lives, for whatever reason, somehow they ended up on a certain point in the spectrum of that specific vibration that just happens to coincide very well. And they do end up having a very good long-term relationship. But I think what also happens in these scenarios is you end up outgrowing the other person very quickly, because once you harmonize with one another and you make a life for yourself, you're able to actualize yourself in a way that might take you to a whole new level of existence. You might want to branch out and try something else other than that relationship. So these are all just, it's all conjecture. It's all like in the air, It's like anything really could happen. But I think that in theory, this would be very likely to occur, and it's worth mentioning, in my opinion. Now, going back to this chart that I made, you will notice that for whatever reason, certain life path numbers have less compatible numbers and more challenge numbers. For example, the 7 life path, with which Be True 1, I believe you said you are. In numerology, typically only 4 is the only number that they tend to get along with outside of their 157 group. And, this happens for a variety of reasons that is contingent upon the psychology of that life path number. Specifically examining the 7 life path, the 7 is a very, very cerebral number. It's the most cerebral of all the life path numbers. And so when you have a person like that, it could be difficult for other people to understand them, especially since they have this common tendency to keep to themselves and not communicate what's going on in their heads. So, like anything in life, most issues in relationships come from miscommunication, not really understanding where the other person is coming from, not really understand what they're going through. It's just all a big misunderstanding most of the time, and not being, willing to work through it or able to work through it for whatever reason. So that is when we see here this dynamic where just some numbers are less compatible with others, and some of them it makes sense, and other times it makes you kind of scratch your head. It's like, really, that number is compatible with that number? I wouldn't have guessed that. And real quick, you'll see in the 5, I wrote a little squiggle underneath the number 8, and that is because it can go either way with the number 8. With the 5 category, I think they do better in business, and that's why. So if they can figure out how to be together and have a good financial union and maybe even have a business together, maybe that would be a good situation for them romantically. Now, if you look at the 2 life path, which I believe you said was your husband, challenges are typically with the 5 and the 7. And that, I think, is because, at least when it comes to the 7, the 2 is a very emotional number, and connection is their existence. And that could look different for every single person, but I think if we are operating on the kind of shadow side of our life path numbers, of whatever that vibration is, what happens is you get the 7 who is turning inwards and not really communicating anything. They're not transparent. They could be seemingly cold shouldering you. Ghosting is what I think they're calling them now, what they're calling it now, that phenomenon. And the 2 will be left alone because, and even if that's not true, that might not be the case. The 2 might not just understand that the 7 is a very cerebral person and isn't going to be all, be expressing their love in the way that the 2 would necessarily interpret it as, if that makes any sense. So that's just one reason why the 2 and the 7 might be an issue. But is this really like an end-all be-all issue? No, of course not. It's a very superficial thing that can be overcome as soon as those 2 people understand where one another are coming from and what that means for them. So I'm going to put this down for now, and just kind of say that, if you do want to know, more about your specific compatibility with other people, whether that be romantically or, like I said, with friends, etc. That is a service that I offer on my Patreon account, and it's only $5 a month. And with that, for my patrons, I make a video every month doing kind of like a mini personal rating, and it's a good time, and it also opens the door for these kinds of communications where I can answer specific questions like that. So if you'd be interested in that, please go to the links in the description. Anything that you would need from me is in every single description in my videos, so be sure to check that out to see if anything interests you. So Be True One, thank you so much for recommending that I make a video on this topic, because this is something that a lot of people could find useful. So if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have this content up here right now. So yeah, I greatly appreciate it. And please let me know if you have any questions beyond what I said. Like, if you were looking at this chart here and something confused you, or you wanted a little bit more detail on something, be sure to ask. Or maybe there's something that's would be worth addressing, like, I don't know, like with the issue with the same life path number. A lot of this stuff comes up in compatibility and numerology. There's a lot of scenarios to explore. And I welcome any questions. Yeah, I welcome any questions that you may have after this video because it's quite open-ended. I am sorry that it was so generalized. I wish that I was a full-time stay at home, or rather just like a full-time business owner and could handle this amount of work, but unfortunately that is not the case. So yeah, I'll have to leave you off here. I plan on making a few more videos this month. Stay tuned for next week because I'm going to be announcing a video that I will be making in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for watching if you made it to the end of this video. I'll see you all soon, and take care.